as you have seen, so in this case, what should be done? We are getting an exception. How to handle it? So this exception we need to handle with a try, except, and else. So in this case, we have the same exception error. We have the message. So in real world, people will not write like this every time. So there were some frameworks called as unit test and PyTest. Especially PyTest works with asserts a lot. That they have written a logic in such a way that if some of them are failing, it will handle. That is a concept of unit testing we will learn afterwards. So this is how we write a code block which will be tested. But these kind of things we should not write in the actual code, only in the unit testing. So if you write in a production code, it will throw an error and it is an issue. If you just want to, raise an exception when something happened, there is another way of doing that is called as raising exceptions. So what is that is another interesting thing. If you want to raise exceptions, means let's say a simple example. You are playing on a real world game like PUBG or NFS or something. Suddenly speed of the internet is less and you don't want the user to play, right? Because it's an interactive game with others, so it would be very difficult. So though everything is correct, code is perfect, you are stopping the user from playing, saying that, hey, so interrupted because of your less internet speed. So this is a where you want to pass. So for that you can use a built-in function called as raise. So if I say raise, so raise is a built-in function. If I just do raise, it is saying what? Runtime error. So the same thing works if I do just raise like this also. So no active exception to re-raise. Exception must be deprived from so and so. So when you are just raising, what it actually does is that we need to raise some exception. If I just do raise exception, it will raise it. So if I do any rising of any exception, so instead of exception, if I say like value error, you got value error. Instead of that, like if I say raise type error, I got type error. So like that, if you want to raise with a type error with some message, so I can write within it some message. If I pass, did you see you got the message? Or if you want to raise with the generic exception, so some message. So you see now, you raised an exception. Sir, can we handle these exceptions also? Yes, of course. Same like the others we can do. So try some exception. So else, so sorry, except. So as it is an exception, we need to handle with exception. And if you print off exception, you get it. So, but like if you handle some other exceptions, fine. But did you observe carefully? As it is like inner is like a exception message. If you try like a value error, it can't be handled. And vice versa can be done. It means, so the inner is like a value error. You can handle with a value error itself. Or inner is like a value error. You can handle with a exception message. So means umbrella exception. Both the things you can do, but not the other side. Hope now we understood what is an exception, in which case you are doing. So let me give the previous example of what we did. So division. When you did a division, you got like two numbers and you want to do, right? So earlier, what's happening when you're taking number one is equal to some value, number two is equal to some other value. And when number one and number two are fine, but like if you are passing number two as a zero, then you don't want to do, right? So what I can do, so till now we have try these two numbers. Say you do the division, number one divided by number two, except some exception to handle as exception So print of repr of exception. For that you can see, okay. And in else case you want to print the message division equal to. If I execute, yeah, sorry. If I execute, it is saying 12 and 34 perfectly. You got the message. So what if you pass this in these cases? One of them is 0, means the divisor is 0. Say 12 and 0 again. You saw you got an exception, right? So only for this edge case, you don't want to do. So in that case, I can say like if number 2 equal to 0, you want to raise, instead of they doing, you want to raise. So 0 division error. Means sometimes raising some exceptions may be costly enough, or like you can make customized. Okay, instead of an ordinary 0 division error, you want to create your own class which can do in a better way. So that also you can do. So don't pass. So denominator as 0. You can raise it. Say if I say 12 and 0 again, did you see that you raise the exception message before even going? So like that you can do all our own. And do you know that we can create our own custom class and do? There is something called as custom exceptions. So if you, for the same 0 division error, I say like, say my exception. So my error, if I wrote, okay, I wrote something like my error, and I want to take which are the error I want to take. I just do a pass. Of course, at this moment, you don't know what is the classes, right? So that's why you won't understand. So just I am writing like this, think. Instead of like 0 division error, I can pass like my error. If I say my error, now did you notice when you executing, if I say 12 and second one is 0, did you see? Instead of 0 division error, I got like my error. Like that, you can write your own custom exceptions also. So it's a great examples. There are like many good examples like this for you to understand. So maybe like if you want to like invalid input, invalid age. So say like we are going for like a polling booth. Polling booth means what? You want like the user need to give the age, and you want to check whether it is valid or not. Age is equal to, say you are getting int of, say input of, say enter candidate age, you are asking. It will enter the age. So there are two things. They can give a wrong in message like a 12.3 or 15.3. That is a invalid message. So whereas they can give a so less age which is less than 18. So they are invalid to vote, right? So like that, if you want to create two classes like that, so I can create some custom classes from the same exception itself. So invalid input, invalid age, like that I created. So now I'm making use of this. I can write the logic. So we can say like age I took. If age is less than or equal to 0, then we can say like invalid input, right? So we can raise so invalid input of, so age should not be less than 0. So, and in the other cases, if age is less than 18, you can say like raise invalid age. So not eligible to vote. In else case, so we can take like you are eligible to vote. Say print you are eligible to vote. So don't you think this is a very interesting way? And if you execute, you get like if I say 12 or 13 or something. So what is saying? Invalid age. You are not eligible to vote. Means what are the exception happens, we need to handle it, right? So for that I write a try block. What are this logic, everything I have, I write within it. And in the except class, I write the exceptions as ex and I print it, print of exception. If I handle it, so if I say 12 again, you see not eligible to vote. And if you want to write the same logic in a better way, so maybe like we can give some attempts attempt equal to 0. So while attempt, so less than say 5, attempt plus equal to 1. So within these attempts, I want to execute the same thing. So user gonna execute 5 times the same thing, the same message. Say if I give 12, so not eligible. So if I execute 23, you are eligible. 43 eligible. So minus 21, 0 should not be less than that. So like that, different messages came. Maybe like if you want to print them, so when you're getting also, you can print it. So what are the exception you're handling? Like that. Hope it's clear. I showed how to write the exceptions in so. And last case, there is something called as exception groups, which was like recently introduced in Python 3. So and so. So what is this exception groups? How they can help us? If you see further, you will notice it. It was introduced in 3.11. Say till now we have seen cases of exceptions. First case, what? We have an exception. We raise a value error, it will execute it. So only value error will be printed. And if I go for the except another case, so this time I want to tell very interesting point. So same like above, instead of like one exception, I am raising like, see, observe carefully. Here only one exception I am raising. So till now you've seen how to handle multiple exceptions. But did you see how to raise multiple exceptions? You see now, I want to write an exception group of 2 exceptions together at one shot. At a time, I want to say like 2 exceptions are there. So this 1 and 2 are just for my understanding, for you to understand. I am writing 2 exceptions. So in this group, value error is there, type error is there. Either of them should be handled. So then it will come down. Observe carefully what happened now. So as you handle value error and type error, which one came from first? You individually added value error and exception error, but you didn't but still it came to the exception. Did you see? So means whenever you are having some kind of things where not every time in real time you'll have only one exception, right? So sometimes you're going to have more than one. So in that case, you can use exception group to raise multiple exceptions at one shot. So you see, observe carefully. In this case, when you did a value error or type error, it didn't handle it. Though both of them were inside it, it has gone to only exception message. So note is like exception group can't be handled by individual exception types. We cannot handle. But slight difference. You see, observe carefully. Did you see I place a star before it? So this is the new syntax in 3.11. After except, there is no star here. Here after exception, there is an asterisk, right? So when you do like that, then things will be different. Did you see now? Same message, you have handled both of them, and apart from that, unhandled exception is also there. So when you do this, observe difference, except star and except cannot be, both are not same. When you did that, so which are having these issues, it will go to each of them and finally come out. So hope you understood. So when you have like multiple exceptions, so you need to handle when you have a group of exceptions, we cannot write like simple except block or like that, because individual exceptions can't be handled. It will generally go to the except block only. But when you are writing this kind of group, and if you want individuals to be handled, you need to place a asterisk before them. And in case 4, if you see, this time I have 3 kinds of exceptions. Individual blocks are only 2. Means value error is there, type error is there. But OS error is a new exception, which we didn't write a block for it. Now we see how it will work. When you wrote, did you see that you got unhandled exception also? Means that The first two exceptions have a blocks here which were handled, but for the third one, you didn't write any block. So that's why it is going to the exception block. Is it clear for everyone? So in the last two cases I have, in the same exception groups is about, you say like in the exception group this time, I have 3 plus again a subgroup of another exception group. So like this also we can have a group within a group, like a subgroup. Anyhow, like subgroups will not be handled directly, right? That we need to handle again separately. In the same logic, like subgroups, you see, I can have another subgroup in a subgroup, a separate subgroup, which is having again these exceptions, like this, whatever way you want. And if you want to get a subgroups within it, you can take that exception dot subgroup. Like this, you can take a exception subgroups also. Of course, this is like cutting edge, which is very recent, 3.11, new exception kind, new types of handling. This is very new, so it would be interesting for you to learn all these things. So if you really want, you can use it like a group like that, and you can handle. See, internal subgroup were handled from the outside exception group, like that you can handle. When you have an exception group, did you see till now? Till now I am using except with an asterisk before, but for the first time I am using something called as except group. Means whenever you have a group of exceptions, if you want to handle all of them, you can go with like this. So this is all about exception hook. Is it clear? Any doubt till now? Is it clear? Okay. Last thing, there is one more thing about exception hooks, basically. Exception hook means what? Hook means what? Anything which can hold is called as a hook, right? So in exceptions, there are something interesting. Till now, we are handling the exceptions, everything is good. But if you want some function to be executed, whenever some exception is happening, that's where we need to define like this. So down the line, you will learn about what is a function, how to write it. A simple function, if I want to write function name, and you write any parameters if you want to take, and within that we need to type. So if I write a small function, so I wrote a exception which is taking 3 things: the exception type, value, and traceback. Generally, when an exception is happening, these 3 things will be there. So if you want to hook this function, there is something called as import sys module. Using that, we can hook this exception. If I hook this exception, you will understand. If I hooked it, sys.exception hook is equal to my function I have. After having it, I want to just execute something. So if I just do like 1 by 0, till now right, whenever if let's assume that I am not executing this function, I am going to the next block and I'm just doing 1 by 0. If I do 1 by 0, I'll get an exception. So this till now. And if I use like a try exception block, it will handle it, right? So for this only, for handling better, we have try exception blocks. Now I wrote this hook, I executed it perfectly, and I executed this try exception block. Now you see here, though you have handled with a block, but still you got an exception message. But if you do the same thing, let's say like a raise message or like any 0 or division or something, if I do 1 by 0, it throws an error, right? Whereas if I do a raise exception of runtime or something, so you got it. If you are executing along with this webhook together, then it will have this thing. This webhook will be executed, means along with that, if you execute together, then whenever the exception is happening, it will handle it. Seems like in interactive mode, it's not working that perfectly. So, but like in script mode, it will work. So whenever this exception is happening, because these exception hooks and all these things are designed for script modes only. So there it will execute perfectly. So Any doubt till now? I rewrite the same thing here. So new.py, and if I write the same program here and execute it, so Python new so and so. Did you see now in this case the same program which I wrote earlier? See, the exception was handled, right? So that is how it works. So this is all about exceptions. So next we will discuss on the debugging and next chapters next.